The Tsaritsa, the Cryo Archon and the God of Love, the leader of the Fatui and the Harbingers and the most powerful organization in Teyvat. Why is she doing what she's doing? Who is she exactly? And how does she intend to execute her grand plan to bring back the old world and overthrow Celestia? In this video, we're going to be going over all of that, as well as why each individual Harbinger chose to follow her. Why are they following her exactly? Because we know they all have their own individual goals, and all of the Harbingers don't seem to get along whatsoever. So why are they all rallying under the Cryo Archon? Because as we know, each Harbinger isn't necessarily from Shesnaya. So what do they have to gain from following the Tsaritsa and the Harbingers? In this video, we're going to be going over all of that. But let's start with what we know about the Tsaritsa, the God of Love. What happened to her to lead her to who she is today? Also, fun fact, the Cryo Nation is going to be the first Archon quest we go to where we're not actually trying to steal a Gnosis from another Archon. Kinda crazy, but that's less than 2 years away now. Seeing as that Natlan's the last Gnosis to get. But, according to Tartaglia, Her Royal Highness the Tsaritsa is actually a gentle soul, too gentle in fact. And that's why she had to harden herself. Likewise, she declared war against the world, only because she dreams of peace. As you know, the Tsaritsa is the ruler of Shesnaya, and she uses her loyal followers, the Fatui, to manipulate and intimidate the other nations of Teyvat. She is targeting the other Archon's Gnosis for her ultimate goal to overthrow Celestia and relinquish their control over the other Archons. The Tsaritsa has the ability to grant her subjects the power separate from visions called delusions. High-ranking Fatui such as the Fatui agents, the mages, mirror maidens, operatives, and obviously the Harbingers can wield these. We know that the Tsaritsa is not one of the original members of the Seven, so she was not in the Archon War. At least, she didn't win the Archon War originally, but she inherited the Cryo Archon position sometime before the Cataclysm 500 years ago. But it is suggested that she's been the Cryo Archon for quite some time now. And after the Cataclysm is when she deeply changed. We don't have a clue what she looks like, but we do know is she's a female, and that her gaze is described as cold but pure. We know that she was a very different type of Archon before the Cataclysm. So what changed her exactly? What about that conflict? I do think that all the Archons suffer from some sort of PTSD, and that obviously what she saw there and watching an entire nation get wiped off the face of the earth and annihilated obviously left her embittered but also devastated. Being the God of Love, that can't be easy. Look at Venti, he drinks. Morax seems to be okay for the most part, but he doesn't really like to talk about the events of what happened. They're all shaken up in some form. The Raiden Shogun buried her head in the sand, and basically became a dictator, or her puppet did at least, terrified of anything changing in her nation. The Dendro Archon unfortunately was born after this. She seems to be the most level-headed right at the moment, and Farina, we know, had to actually fool the Heavenly Principles in order to keep her whole nation's bad prophecy from coming to fruition. But I think the Tsaritsa's motives can be pretty straightforward, at least much more than we think. I think literally it boils down to her being the God of Love, and this whole thing is like one big bad breakup on a molecular scale. Like, listen to what Dainsleif said.
She is a god with no love left for her people, nor do they have any left for her. Her followers hope only to be on her side when the day of her rebellion against the divine comes at last. In the perpetual meantime of a sheltered eternity, most are content to live and not to dream.
And it's unfortunate because I really think it's a lot of different factors. You got the Cataclysm, you got people being annihilated, you got the Archons doing the bidding of Celestia, you got Conria. We don't know who's in the right or wrong. We don't know who initiated it. We don't know the reasons or the little details, but we know this conflict happened. Would Conria pick a fight for no reason? I don't think so. And I don't think the Archons think so either. But all the Archons handle this in a different way, but they're all shaken up. And Archons are just mortals that ascended to godhood after all. They have feelings and they feel grief and loss just like us all. But being the God of Love, this has to be tenfold. Like I said, imagine like a breakup on like a grandest scale you could think of. Now, when you're going through a breakup, you're devastated. everyone is. We've all been through this. But imagine if you're the god of love. It's gonna be this feeling on like a worldwide scale. So I think, like Tartaglia says, she has no choice but to harden herself, even though she probably doesn't want to, and really just has to do what she needs to do, by any means necessary, and the ultimate goal, to rid Celestia of the heavenly principles and what controls Teyvat, because Celestia controls everything, and they are the ultimate threat to everyone and everything in Teyvat at all times. You know, their prophecies, their punishments, this goes along in every nation. But the Tsaritsa specifically is turning her love off. And ultimately, how would she even execute this? We know the Gnosis are the remains of the third Descender, and obviously going to Natlan, the theme of resurrection surrounding it, we can summarize that there's a good chance they're trying to resurrect the third Descender to help them in their mission. Whether that's true or not, we don't know, but either way, they're going to have to do something to execute this, because just getting rid of the Gnosis from each Archon might not be enough. But she does have her loyal band of followers though, the Harbingers. Now we know that Tsaritsa is absolutely disgusted with the other Archons, but I actually think that they might be in on it too. I think that they're honestly all in on it. Like, we know the endgame is to rid Celestia's control over Teyvat, free everyone. I think her endgame is, because she loves everyone and everything so much, that she kind of has to turn that off to get this done. And if that means embedding her military into every nation and doing things that maybe aren't ethical, well, it is what it is. And yes, early on she was portrayed as the main villain of the game, but now we've been playing this game long enough that we know better. I don't think her faith in people has changed, just her stance on Celestia for the most part. I think each Archon too knows her plans and is fully on board, but they can't make it look too obvious, because Celestia will know. Like, Venti kinda gave up his Gnosis fairly easy. Zhongli made a contract to end all contracts with her. The Raiden Shogun didn't really deal with her, but Yaimiko basically is the Archon of Inazuma, and she seems to know the truth as well. The Tsaritsa is winning every battle, because they are all rigged to begin with, and Celestia just can't know this. Even Nahida didn't seem to have a problem giving up the Gnosis either, but she wanted to neutralize the Doctor as much as she could. So more or less, it's just a chess game that's rigged against Celestia, and they don't know it yet. They don't know what's coming. Now, as far as the Harbingers go, her band of loyal followers, I don't think that she necessarily knows everything that goes on with them, that their director manages them, and they just kind of do what they need to do to get shit done. I don't think she realizes how unethical it might be, being that she is the god of love, whether she's cold as ice right now or not, and has no love left. I'm sure there is an extent to what she knows. And like I said, the Fatui could even be manipulating her grief, after all, because she is grieving. Like I said, think of the world's biggest heartbreak/breakup devastation. That's what she's going through right now. For the most part, are following her and on board with her, but could be using her and that grief to get what they want out of it. Now, let's go over each Harbinger and why they would be following her to begin with. Obviously, some of these we're going to have to speculate a little bit or make some guesses, but Piero, I think, is the most straightforward one, the director and the first Harbinger. Now, there's three options when it comes to him, because he was a royal mage from Conria. He would have saw what the Tsaritsa saw firsthand. Maybe her being summoned there with all the other Archons, maybe that is exactly how they met and how they formed this alliance to say, you know what, screw Celestia. We're going to come up with a 500-year plan, recruit some of the most infamous people we can, and we're going to make this happen. Now, Piero could be manipulating her grief, like I said, or she could be manipulating him, using him, or they could just genuinely be like a solid partnership with trust. Any of those options could be possible. But his motives are probably the most pure and genuine, being that he's from Conria, and he probably despises Celestia, so he does want to get back to the old world like he said in the trailer. Now, as for the captain, I have no idea why he'd be aligned with the Fatui. It can be assumed, though, that something he did or something happened, because each of the Harbingers, for the most part, are related to what happened with Conria in some way or form, whether it be direct or indirect. Now, we don't know his backstory or even who he is, but I speculate he's from Natlan, and that something happened in the Cataclysm led him to be where he is today, and he would have been one of the first recruited. Do I think he's on board with their plan and fully embraces it? I would say because he's known as honorable and he's just, righteous, I would say yes. I don't think he seems like the kind of guy that would manipulate and scheme. I think if he's going to be on board with an organization and their plans, he's going to be for it. He's going to actually have some passion in what they're fighting for. I don't think he's the type of person that's going to be the first Harbinger and lead an army and doesn't even agree with what they're doing. Now that can't be said for the Doctor though, number 2. I really don't think he gives a damn about what they're doing. I think he's more or less sees it as like an opportunity to experiment and do what he really wants to do, and that this is the best way for him to do it. They have the best resources, the best military, probably the best funding and research equipment and materials and everything. I think he's on board with overthrowing Celestia for sure, but at the end of the day, I think he's in it for himself. Now for Columbina, this is probably the hardest one to guess, because as of now, I speculate her being the shade of death, Faunus, or a Seelie of some kind of entity or being. If she was from the original world under Faunus, then her hatred for Celestia would make sense, because it was either Faunus that was a turncoat, or the second who came, or Nibelung, or one of the options that we have overthrew and usurped again, and her original creator either defeated or turned on them all. So either way, I think her motives, if she is from the old world, would make perfect, clear sense. But that's only if she was created from the primordial one, and she is the shade of death or something like this. Otherwise, your guess is as good as mine, if that's not the case. Arlecchino, but I don't think that she's loyal to the Fatui whatsoever. Even Tartaglia already kind of tells us this. I really think for her, this is a means to an end. It's a practical choice for her to be in this organization right now and doing their bidding. She gains something from this, but the minute that she doesn't, I think she jumps ship or betrays them. The Rooster, I think, is loyal to the cause, and I think he's probably the most loyal to the actual Cryo Archon, being from Shesnaya and being the mayor of Shesnaya. Now, he could have joined just to gain status and power, but I do think that he's probably loyal to his nation's Archon, because the Tsaritsa is his Archon, so he does probably stand with her wholeheartedly. The Balladeer, we know, could not give a damn about the Tsaritsa, the Fatui, or the Harbingers. He doesn't get along with any of them, and he ain't even a part of the Harbingers anymore. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time and got manipulated by the Doctor through his own grief and loss. That's basically it for Scaramouche. He doesn't give a damn about what they're doing. Sandrone, for the most part, seems to be a lifeless robot, which is probably what she is. But other than her own research and engineering, I don't think she cares about anything. I think the Harbingers and the Fatui are like the best choice for her to be involved with to get the best engineering research and materials, kind of like the Dore, but for the more mechanical side of it. I think she's literally only part of the Harbingers because funding's there, the research there, and it's the best organization to be a part of if you want to do these things. Plus, being a part of the Harbingers means you can get away with a lot of pretty unethical and illegal stuff in the name of experimentation and building and science. I honestly think she just wants to build and tinker. I don't think she cares about anything else. La Senora, for the most part, seemed to be pretty on board with their cause. She actually bagged a couple Gnosis herself, and she was on her way to get her third when she got executed. Now, Senora's story is tragic, and I think that the Fatui, especially Piero, manipulated this grief to use her talents as the Crimson Witch to send her on diplomatic missions. Now, I do think Senora is loyal to Tsaritsa, and I do think she shares in the Tsaritsa's hatred of all the other Archons and just Celestia in general, which is why she's so passionate about what she's doing. She doesn't really get along with her subordinates whatsoever, any of them, but she's pretty efficient, until she got killed, of course. I do, however, think that she was sent to her death, and I think Yaimiko and Scaramouche arranged this. And I think it was all a ploy to get the Raiden Shogun out of her funk. Because they are going to need the Archons once phase 2 of this grand plan and all the Gnosis are collected. They're going to need the Archons. So I think that Tsaritsa sacrificed Senora, sadly. Or at least Piero did. That's just my guess, though. The Regrator is another one that is definitely on board with what they're doing. Seeing as that he wasn't given a vision as a child, and he doesn't understand why Celestia gets to dictate who gets a vision and who gets favored. So he doesn't really care for Celestia, the divine, and he uses his wealth and power to try to even the playing field. So his motives, again, straightforward. I think he genuinely does align himself with the Saritsa and her goals, and isn't in it totally for himself. He's already the richest guy in Teyvat, or one of the richest, so I don't really think he has anything to gain from being part of the Fatui if he didn't agree with what they were doing. The 10th Harbinger, we don't even know who this is, so take your best guess. And finally, Tartaglia. I honestly don't think he actually cares even a little bit what they're doing. This guy just wants to fight strong opponents. The only reason he even joined the Harbingers was to keep him out of trouble to begin with. And now, for the most part, yeah, he probably does their bidding pretty loyally, and he probably wants to work his way up the ranking. I mean, you are part of the biggest military on the planet, so, you know, you're a prestige member. I'm sure it's pretty exciting for a guy his age and status, and he does idolize a lot of the Harbingers ranked above him and wants to get stronger. But at the end of the day, Tartaglia cares about his family, fighting strong opponents, and getting stronger. The Harbingers just allow him to do these three things in the most frequent way possible. That's the only reason he's a part of the Harbingers. As far as their big endgame, I'm sure he's not even in the loop on what the main bread and butter of their plans are. I'm sure the only top Harbingers are fully in the loop on like the false sky, all that stuff. I think Tartaglia is really just, alright, I don't need to ask questions, I'm just going to do what you tell me to do, I'm going to fight strong opponents and just work my way up. So that's pretty much going to wrap up the video on the Saritsa, what we know, the Harbingers, and why they actually follow her. The Saritsa is not somebody that's talked about a lot, but you know, after Natlan, we're finally going to get to meet her. But let me know what your thoughts are on the Saritsa, why the Harbingers might be following her for their own personal selfish means, or if they're actually on board. Again, thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, we'll see you all in the next one. Later.